It was very natural to join the army and use my previous skills because I knew that I have enough knowledge to protect my country. I know how to use a weapon, and I can protect myself first of all and my family, and then I can do that for my country.
Yulia, thank you so much for joining us today. When you were growing up in Ukraine, did you ever imagine that you would be doing what you're doing today, fighting on the front line for your country?
Thank you for inviting. Absolutely no. I was planning to be an interpreter or humanitarian studying or Ukrainian literature, English literature. I'm fond of literature at all in the culture. So definitely no. I had no idea that I will be forced to be a military and protect my family and my country as well.
So when did you first get involved with fighting for your country?
I think it's 2013 when the Revolution of Dignity started. It's sort of my I don't know. Baptism on fire. Yeah, it's very, very pathetic. But this is the event when I actually felt that I am the part of a big, great country, and I can choose and I can influence on the democratic ways and democratic values in my country.
And back in 2014 was when Russia first invaded and seized one part of Ukraine. And I think it was then that you actually started volunteering.
Yes. I actually wanted to join the army in 2014 when actually Russia invaded Ukraine. But I've been there in a second course of university, and I thought that it might be not a good idea to leave my university and enter and join the army. So I decided to continue my studying, and after that I joined in 2016.
And it was when we saw the most recent full-scale invasion by Russia in 2022 that you found yourself really engaged in some serious fighting.
Sort of. Actually, I've been a civilian for half of the year before the full-scale invasion, and actually I felt quite great in a civilian life. But in the day of invasion in 2022, I just went to recruitment center. First, I joined a company which were in a recruitment center. Which was in the recruitment center, and when the Russians left Kiev Oblast, I was taking part in stabilization actions. So we just patrolling the occupied territory.
And what was it like at that time when Russia first invaded and you found yourself out there defending your country?
It was very natural, I suppose. I think it's not a good word, but I mean, I wasn't happy about a full-scale invasion, but for me it was very natural to join the army and use my previous skills because I knew that I have enough knowledge to protect my country. I know how to use a weapon, and I can protect myself first of all and my family, and then I can do that for my country.
And you were married to a Ukrainian soldier.
Yes.
And he was himself killed in combat.
Yes.
Tell us what it was like when you heard. How did you hear what had happened to him?
It actually happened in 2018. I was just a few kilometers from him because we served in one battalion, but he was in another company. I've already been like a commander of reconnaissance unit. and I had a radio station, military radio station. So I heard in the radio station that there are two men, 300. It means like a wounded one. We call 300 for those who are wounded and 200 for a dead one. And I heard that there are two wounded soldiers, and I just like felt that it might be my husband because he had a friend, and they're always like were. They always were together. They just go into the gray zone, stole the Russian rifle and brought it to our position. Yeah, so yeah, they were just always were together. So I heard this, but I really was praying that it won't be him. It wouldn't be him. But unfortunately, the one soldier who was on a duty in the headquarters of my battalion, he asked me whether is Ilya is his name, is yours. First, I thought that it's one of my comrades who actually also was named Ilya. But after that, I said yes, and he said pray for him. Yeah, that's how I found out that it was my husband. After that, I went to the local hospital where usually wounded were. Evacuation took 2 hours. It's quite huge amount of time because a previous month Russians destroyed evacuation medicine armor vehicle with a girl medic inside of it, and our commander, he made a decision that none of evacuation cars would pass the front line. So, which is why it took quite a long period of time to evacuate him from the front line, and these 2 hours were critical. Actually, doctors were trying to save him, but unfortunately, his friend stayed alive, and my husband were dead. Unfortunately.
It must have been a devastating loss, and you yourself were still only in your early 20s, and yet you went back out onto the front line.
Actually, after 2018, I asked my commanders to transfer me to Kiev, to my family, because I felt that I couldn't I just couldn't continue to be with my comrades and making some decisions in the front line. So, which is why I asked to transfer me, and I served in a Kiev Military Lyceum. So it wasn't on the front line, but I was in the army and just doing my job there. And in 2021, I left the army just to live some civilian life, and just in the half of the year, the full-scale invasion started.
And at that point, you went back out onto the front line?
Yes.
And what has it been like the last 2 years out there fighting? I know that you've spent a lot of time in Donbass, where there's been some ferocious fighting.
I spent there almost all of my time. Basically, we have all soldiers have only 30 days per year to spend at home. So it's like 15 years on the one half of the year and 15 days on the other half of the year. So it's not very much to deal with some problems and just to be with family. I feel a little bit tired, of course, because it's very hard to be in such intensive war all the time. But I know why I am doing this, and this give me some motivation, and don't let me to give up.
Because you want to defend your country.
I want to defend myself and my family, first of all. And second one, I don't want to let down my fallen comrades, my deceased husband and father. because they already gave their lives for our lives, and which is why I feel a great responsibility for that.
Your book is called How Good It Is, I Have No Fear of Dying, but there must be times there when you do feel fear.
Yes, I have two fears at war. First one is to be imprisoned by Russian, and second one is to be raped. And both these are almost the same, because of my background and because I just hate Ukrainians at all. So this is only two my biggest fears: to be under occupation or to be caught and be raped. So I will do everything. I'm not afraid to die or to be injured or whatever, but I'm really afraid to be imprisoned and be raped.
And there must be particular challenges as a woman out there on the front line, as a woman commanding an entire unit.
Yes, but it's not very critical actually. Yes, sometimes it's not very comfortable when I've got some women stuff. I mean, some periods or whatever. But actually, I got used to it, and my comrades, my brothers in arms, they're extremely respectful, and they respect my privacy, and they respect me. It took some time to get that respect and authority, but since I got it, they just fully trust me, respect me fully, and give me a lot of privacy and respect. So I feel really free and preserved with them.
And it's just you, just one lone woman with many men around you?
Since it's been 2 months that I've recruited another one woman. She wanted to be in my unit just because she knows my story, and she's a friend of mine, comrade, and she asked to be in my unit.
And what are your living conditions like? Because we see some footage of what it's like on the front line in trenches and so on.
For now, I'm not living in trenches. I used to. Actually, we have like a system of rotations. You're driving to trenches, stay there for some period of time. It may be 5 days or 7 days or 2 weeks. It depends on the situation on the front line. But for now, since I'm like a commander and I have quite a lot of people, I'm doing sort of organizations, and I'm living like 20 plus kilometers from the front line. It is in one of the abandoned houses in the destroyed villages. I wouldn't say that my condition is very bad, but it also need to be used for. The only one thing that really drives me crazy is the absence of a toilet. I mean, like a normal toilet, and the absence of hot water. I spent like 1 hour just to make my hygiene, morning stuff, such prostitution. I really hate to wash my hair because I need a lot of water for that, and it took me like also an hour to do that.
What would you say has been your worst moment during the last 2 years of this war?
The worst moment is when I lose my comrades. This is the worst moment, actually. From my unit, I have, for now, I hope it remains the same. I lost 2 men. As deceased. And also there were few who were injured, but they're alive. And this was the worst moments when I lose my comrades, not only those who are in my unit, but also those with whom I serve in the company, because it's very traumatic, actually.
We've had your President Zelensky presenting his victory plan in Parliament today. he has said that he wants allies to provide some sort of deterrence and to give permission for Ukraine to have these longer range missiles that they can fire into Russia. How much difference would that make to the conflict that you're fighting?
Actually, first, it will make easier for us to hit strategical objects in the territory of Russia. Basically, we are doing it now with our drones, but it needs a lot of drones to hit the right target. And with missile, it will be a little bit easier. And as you know, we are targeting only strategic targets. I mean, not civilian objects, just like fuel bases and artillery basements or whatever. So it's first moment that it will really do our life a little bit simpler. And the second one, it's a very psychological moment. I mean, Putin is also always said that don't cross red lines, don't cross red lines. It's almost sounds like a meme, because all the time that he told don't cross a red line, we are starting to laugh, because it was a red line with the F-16, it was a red line of territory of Russia and whatever, and nothing actually happened. But this decision will show him that the West is ready for hard but very right decisions.
And the one thing that President Zelensky did not talk about was giving up any of Russia's territory. Many people who've looked ahead to potential negotiations which could end the war believe that Ukraine will have to give up some territory. You're fighting in Donbass, parts of which has been occupied by Russians since 2014. Do you think that Ukraine should be prepared to give up perhaps some of its territory if that could bring peace?
Actually, it won't bring peace until Russia won't collapse. Yes, until Russia won't collapse. I very like this metaphor. When the robber came to your house, you just negotiate with him. You tell him, okay, I will let you live in a kitchen, but please don't touch another our space. And do you think he won't touch? Actually, no. He will continue to try to grab all of your space. So, which is why I think if some negotiations will be, and the terms will be umowy.
Terms, yeah.
Terms of Russia will be included more than Ukrainian interests. Then it's just will be another period for preparing a new wave of war. It might not be as it is it now, but it definitely will be. It may actually be somewhere in another place, Syria, Iran, or whatever. But I think it's going to be.
Yulia, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Lara, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What made you decide to write this book focusing on Yulia's personal experience?
Well, I've been a journalist for 43 years, and only 2 or 3 times in my career have I ended an interview and said, wow, what an amazing person. And in August of 2023, I was in Kyiv working with a great interpreter, Nazarya Tsishin, and we were put in touch with Yulia by Veteranka, which is a women's veterans group. And we were rushing around Kyiv, interviewing Russian dissidents and all kinds of people. And I sort of said, so what are we doing now? And Nazar said, it's the lady drone operator. So we had a Zoom interview. She was on the front line. And this lovely young woman, smiling, shows up in khaki T-shirt on the screen in front of me. And I said, so you're a drone operator, a drone pilot? She said, no. I'm the commander of a platoon of 25 men. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I really didn't know her story. And we talked for nearly an hour. And basically, I learned her whole life story in an hour. And also her dedication, her courage. And when we turned off the computer, I looked at the interpreter and I said, what an amazing woman. And even then, it was for an article for the Irish Times about women in the Ukrainian military. So I talked to a half dozen of them, and she was a big part of the story. But it occurred to me maybe 3 weeks later when I was back in Paris. I was actually in the shower one morning, and it was like an epiphany. It just shot into my head, you have to write a book about Yulia. And even then, I didn't think for months that I wasn't sure it was going to work.
And how important do you think it is to tell a personal story like this? I've worked in war zones myself in the past, and very often when you are covering them, reporting perhaps for another country, you're looking at the big strategic picture, you're looking at what the political or military leaders are saying. But this conveys what it's like for somebody working and fighting on the front line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that if you there's a kind of deadening effect of news reports if it's wire agencies do wonderful work, but if it's night after night after night, the same sort of thing, the Russians have moved forward 100 meters here and 100 meters there, and I think it doesn't really mean anything to people. But if you can tell them that there's this amazing young woman, lieutenant in her 20s, who's already a widow, who's also lost her father, who's living on the front line and under Russian bombardment all the time. I mean, there was one point when we were working on the book when I didn't hear from her for several weeks. I was terrified something had happened to her. She was in a basement and just under shell fire constantly. And if you can tell that through the eyes of one person, it makes it accessible to people, I believe.
And this book comes at a time when many of Ukraine's allies are dealing not just with the war in Ukraine, but of course the escalating conflict in the Middle East. Do you think that there is a risk at the moment that the attention of the West is simply no longer on Ukraine as it was perhaps in the early months of the most recent war?
Not only is it a risk, it's a fact. And it's totally unfair. I remember that after the atrocities of October 7th, Joe Biden compared Hamas to the Russians. I thought, wait a second. It just got all mixed up, the whole comparison. But there was a shipment of tens of thousands of 155 millimeter artillery shells, which I knew the Ukrainians desperately needed. They were having their artillery shells rationed, and that was diverted and sent to Israel so it could shell Palestinians with those shells. And now, since April, you remember there was a big attack against Israel by Iran, and the US and Britain and France and Jordan all used their aircraft to shoot down the missiles and drones that were being fired on Israel. And in Ukraine, people said, hey, wait a minute, if they can stop the missiles and drones exploding in Israel, they can stop them exploding in Ukraine. Why aren't they doing that? So it seems very unfair, very hypocritical to Ukrainians.
And we're heading into another winter. Do you fear that this war in Ukraine is going to be, if not essentially frozen, but still stuck along those lines which haven't moved a huge amount in many months now?
Unfortunately, the Russians are gaining ground. Yulia's brigade is one of the best, and they're holding them back better than most. But this year alone, they took Marinka in Donetsk. They took Avdiivka after a very long and fierce battle. They're in the process of taking Toretsk right now, which is an important strategic hilltop town. And Pavlovsk is probably going to fall in the near future. So they are eating away at Donbass. And Putin's number one war objective from the beginning has been to take the entire Donbass region, which is the Luhansk and Donetsk, and he's got about 2/3 of it already. So he thinks he can still get more territory. And the Ukrainians are fighting very, very hard, very bravely, and I'm afraid the West is not giving them the help they need.
Lara, thank you very much indeed.